Eager to make more informed decisions around crypto using data you can trust? Chainalysis demystifies cryptocurrency by providing industry-leading compliance, market intelligence, and investigation support for all crypto assets for organizations like Gemini, Crypto.com, and BlockFi. Maximize your potential with the leading blockchain data platform by visiting Chainalysis.com/thescoop now. This episode is brought to you by IWC. IWC Schaffhausen is a Swiss luxury watch manufacturer based in Schaffhausen, Switzerland. Known for its unique engineering approach to watchmaking, IWC combines the best of human craftsmanship and creativity with cutting-edge technology and processes. Discover the full collection at IWC.com or download the IWC app to experience a virtual try-on now. All opinions expressed by hosts and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and not necessarily those of the blocks. Podcast guests may have taken positions in the assets or other matters discussed in this podcast. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions. For full terms, visit theblockcrypto.com/terms-service. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning into The Scoop. I'm your host, Frank Chaparro, editor-at-large at The Block, and today, joining us on the other side of the mics are my guests, Roneil Rumburg, co-founder and CEO of Audius and Grammy award-winning DJ and advisor at Audius, Mr. RAC. Gentlemen, thank you so much for taking the time. Really appreciate the energy that I'm already getting from you folks. So I'm sure that it's going to be a great and interesting show. I'll give a little bit about Audius, and then Roneil, maybe you can amplify it or correct me because I'm sure I'll get something wrong. But Roneil, you were a former software engineer. You co-founded a payments company called Backslash. Of course, RAC, Grammy-winning DJ. You've got some hits. You've done some remixes, I think, with the likes of Katy Perry, U2, and Lana Del Rey. And now you're on The Scoop. I mean, that's another feather in your cap. So when we think about Audius, I mean, I'm thinking the intersection of music and Web3. Is that about right?
That is exactly right. You know, we're a music community and discovery platform that puts the artist in control. That's our reason for existence.
You know, what's funny is I was watching a Twitter video from the head of Instagram at Meta, and it's funny, they use this same sort of language that I hear from Web3 founders, which is we want to empower creators. Of course, Instagram, you know, it doesn't really stand up. And I'm sure if you were to talk to any of these Web2 platforms, Spotify and the rest, you know, they're going to say the same type of thing. I guess in a word or in a few sentences from both of you, like, how do you think something like Audius and then Web3 broadly actually does what these companies say they're trying to do?
I can start with Audius, and I think Andre is far more well-positioned than, you know, pretty much anyone else in the space to speak to Web3 broadly and, you know, his work in the area. But yeah, for Audius specifically, we feel the only way to kind of truly build an audience that you have control of, that you have complete access to, et cetera, is by making the platform itself through which artists and those fans are connecting fully decentralized, right? So in Audius, all of the content, all of the metadata, all of the clients for accessing that are decentralized. They're owned, operated, controlled by the community, which means that our company could go away tomorrow and all of this would keep working the same way that it always has been and always will be. But from the artist perspective, there's no lock-in here, right? You can take your following and your data that you have here and use it anywhere else that you want to without having to get our permission or anything else. So that's really what we mean when we say kind of puts the artist in control, or kind of gives power back to the creator. There shouldn't be this kind of sense of platform lock-in that we have today on Spotify or places like that, where as a creator you don't really know who your fans are, and you don't have the ability to kind of port that fan base between experiences.
Yeah. So Andre, how does that speak to the main problem of Web 2 streaming?
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me. I think it's important to recognize that there's been a trend since really like 2005 in the MySpace era and all of that. There's been a trend towards, sort of sovereignty of an artist, of putting the artist at top. I think we've realized that the practices of the 90s, and especially like pre-Napster era music industry, was not sustainable in the internet age. So, I think there's been like a real strong sort of trend starting before Web3 was even, before any of this was around. So, I actually think like Napster in a way was sort of the beginning of all that, and, sort of the unbundling of the music industry. So, let's say from 2005, the MySpace era, you start to control your own platforms. In a sense, you control your profiles. The sort of physical equivalent of that would have been like, the storefront or something like that. So now you're controlling that. You're selecting what songs are heard by people. You can have MySpace friends or whatever. And the early projects, like MySpace and SoundCloud and Facebook, a lot of those were kind of, more specifically SoundCloud, was solving the problem of audio hosting. So it's like kind of funny to think about now because it's such a non-issue anymore, but at the time, being able to host like MP3 files or even WAV files was sort of unheard of. You had to, pay for hosting. It was like a whole thing. So, we saw a trend with SoundCloud, and that was maybe the first iteration of that. And that was a wave that I got to ride from 2007 of like putting the artist in control of, your output. And, we later saw so many artists sort of break out from SoundCloud and, get record deals because they were first discovered on SoundCloud. So it was an interesting time, to be in music and be an artist where really our reliance on labels has sort of been diminishing over and over. And so it's becoming less of a necessity to make it in the music industry, where you can really just kind of do your own thing. And I think I'm maybe the first generation that even had that opportunity. I've been doing this for close to 15 years now, which is kind of crazy. So it's, I've sort of gotten to ride that wave, and I do feel like we've learned a lot in that process. And when you hear Spotify or Meta or anybody sort of claim that they're artists first, or they're putting the artists as I mean, on some level, they're that is what they're trying to do. But I think for those of us that are sort of really involved in on a deep level, that's not enough. And I think that's sort of where Web3 comes in, where it's like, okay, the artist should really, really be in control of these platforms still to this day, even though they make some of the tools that make it easy to be accessed and discovered. The actual like behind the scenes data and the level of sort of granularity of like accessing your audience, and all of that is very much gate kept in the current sort of model, or like the Web 2 model. So being able to access all that information, and being able to like sort of create that direct connection on a financial level too, which is also like kind of important, because like on social media today, I think you could argue that they enable you to interact with your audience in a meaningful way.
Yeah.
But you don't own that. And, once that platform changes their algorithm or whatever they decide to do that month, which happens a lot. Anybody that makes, any kind of content for Instagram knows how like crazy it is right now.
This is what he was addressing in that video, right? Just a lot of the changes they made to the feed, trying to get, reels on your feed more frequently.
Exactly.
And what he was saying is we're doing that because it's going to help with discoverability for new artists, upstart artists, which, to your point, which is I think what you're making, is to some extent that's true, but
right. But you don't own that but you
don't own it. Yeah.
In fact, they are monetizing your audience, or my audience, and if to make it personal, like, I've built audiences on multiple different platforms over the years. Like, it's a lot of work, you spend a lot of time. But just for context, like my biggest following still to this day is on SoundCloud, a platform that really not many people use anymore. So I have this massive audience, like locked into this platform that I can't move anywhere else. And, I think it's like normal to kind of lose people along the way, but, I don't own that connection in any way. So, I think like if we're really taking a step back at like what the Web3 thing is trying to solve is really sort of establishing that direct connection with the fan. And that to me is like new. That's net new,
Mm-hmm. Do you want to speak to that, Roneil? Like this connection, that's the thing that everyone talks about, is there's a more intimate connection. You can understand the audience more deeply. You have control over your data, and to an extent, the data that represents your audience. So they're kind of interconnected there. What other aspects are there?
Yeah, I mean, I think kind of the downstream effect of all of those things that you mentioned is that you can better monetize these followers if you understand them, can target them effectively, and can provide them products and experiences in a targeted manner that they can't get elsewhere. An example I often mention on this front is like Spotify will only allow a creator to message their fans on a very infrequent basis. I think it's like once a year. They actually exercise some editorial control over what you can say. So usually people will use this to announce like, oh, I'm releasing a new album, right? But, imagine if you could, for example, say, hey, I'm playing a show in Cleveland next week. Why don't I shoot a message out to all of my fans who've listened to my music from IP addresses that are based in the Ohio area, and then maybe they could buy a ticket and come to the show, right? You can do that with the data that you get through channels like Audius, right? Because you have that direct connection with the fan. And I think putting it in concrete terms like that, it kind of makes clear, just how different things are in the music industry with respect to how much data people are accustomed to getting. Like in tech land, right? You would put a Google Analytics tag on your website and know like absolutely everything about what times of day your users might be using the bathroom because you see their usage drop off. But in music, you really have no clue. You have absolutely no sense of, who these people are or anything about them.
So what does this mean for artists who kind of get on board with Audius? Are they putting the record label behind them forever? Is there room for sort of cooperation, I think is the word I'm going to make up, cooperating with the competitors? How does that dynamic work?
There's a lot of different models you can approach. I personally, at this point in my career, I'm fully independent, so I control everything. So that's an easy choice for me to upload there. I'd say that most people are definitely like okay with it. I mean, it's like, if you're signed to a label and it's a rigid kind of thing, I think a lot of people still see it as sort of a segment of the market that's a little bit different and unique. And I think there's a lot of space for collaboration and for working together. I don't see it as this like, a lot of times this kind of thing is painted as us versus them, and that's not necessarily true. I think it can all be a part of like a successful strategy to reach a lot of people. But the difference is that, something like this, I think, is a lot more rewarding to the artist. So it's, I think like naturally people will gravitate towards something that you have more control over and is just a better experience.
Mm-hmm. So what are the tools that you have at your disposal? Like, do you go into a dashboard and you like, what can you see? What can you visualize and then act upon?
Yeah, so it's a very, very simple product to use, right? There are now nearly 7 million people using the network every month. And I think that's just because you don't need to be super crypto native and all of this to be able to engage here and get value as a creator or as a fan. But yeah, from the creator's perspective, that user journey is, you go sign up for an account, you can drag content in and upload it, put it on your profile and share it out, both within Audius to the feeds of content that people subscribe to playlists and whatnot, but also to your following elsewhere. And then as folks follow you and engage with that content, there's an internal dashboard you get with all kinds of ways to slice and dice and look at that data in real time as it's being generated. But the raw data is also there. So there are kind of the larger artist teams and things of that nature. If they want access to the raw feed of what's happening, it's possible to pull that as well. So
one thing I wanted to mention is like, a little bit is like sort of what there is currently, but a lot of it is sort of like building the right sort of infrastructure for something in the future. So it's sort of like also creating an open network, that can be built upon. I think everybody here is probably a fan of open source software. You see what it can do when a large group of people decide to focus on one platform. And we don't really have that in Web 2 land, because it's all siloed data. They limit what you can do with it. And I understand why they do that, because that's their moat. That's what keeps them in business. But this model sort of changes that. And where maybe there's not like a crazy amount of like actionable data like today, but sort of, I feel like it's like the right infrastructure to build upon that you can expand on, that nobody controls, sort of all the benefits of decentralization that we talk about a lot in sort of the broader crypto ecosystem, but sort of in this case applied to music, even just like analytics,
Yeah, there's kind of a well-trodden path of platforms scaling by offering a really rich API and then like rug pulling it away once they're at scale, right?
Or charging for
Twitter
it or
did
something.
That. Yep, exactly. And in the case of Audius or any other Web3 native ecosystem, like there is no special API that our client has that's different from anyone else's client. They're actually like community operated clients that offer more features on Audius than the native like first party client does, because it's a level playing field. Anyone can build whatever interface they want to on top of it. And we can't change those rules around the API. The community could, but like I couldn't just sit in a room and say, hey, like, we're just going to take away the ability to stream music in third-party experiences. It's not possible for me to do that.
Yeah, like if you wanted to pull like Spotify and kick Taylor Swift off, you would need the entire like governance community to agree and get on board with that.
Yeah.
Effectively. That's the network side. So there's kind of like these two elements that contribute to the value proposition, the openness of the data, as well as sort of the ownership that exists among the community to sort of drive decision making. Can I digress on something that I think is interesting, which is something that I think Web3 or not has been developing, which is just the extent to which artists and musicians personally, or at least their posse, are leveraging data rather than the companies that sort of operate in the music industry. And it kind of reminds me of, on Wall Street, which is where I sit, trading market structure, there was a transition in the 80s where you had the traders and you had the data guys, and never the twain shall meet. It wasn't allowed, right? And, over the course of like the 90s, you had these quants developed that were basically like math geeks who also traded. And so the traders weren't just, going off their gut and thinking, who knows what's going to come out of the FOMC or this macro thing, I'm going to put on this trade. Maybe you have some, maths involved, but it wasn't very quantitatively driven. And now obviously, literally you have to be like an MIT computer scientist to like be a rates trader in 2022. And I wonder if that's going to happen to music to some extent. Can you not just think, oh, I'm going to play at this bar? You're going to be looking at the data to see, okay, no, I need to be in Cleveland because that's who's interested in Rastafarian jazz or something.
Yes, the new genre.
Yeah. You can get started on that, Andre.
No, I mean, yeah, like I feel like the unlocking of that information, in some way will sort of professionalize this industry, because like this is something that Roneil and I talk about a lot, where the music industry, there's still elements of it that are still on pen and paper. There's so much inefficiency. I feel like a lot of industries have really professionalized, and to be fair, there are sides of the music industry that really have, but there's a lot that is still stuck in the 90s. And and a lot of that hasn't developed because there is no sort of shared infrastructure. There's no, commonality. It's all behind paywalls or like, opaque APIs. So, now that is like becoming more open, I mean, there's really all this opportunity for, this other layer. You could think of it as an application layer, or like it's a layer that a team can sort of tap into. And there's various tools that you can kind of play with, but, none of it's really like that, because it's also patchwork, pulling from all these different areas. So I sort of share that sentiment. I think it's like this is really going to change, and we're talking about just shows. Shows is one side of it. That's like but like if you think about it as digital marketing, like any other product, I mean you can get really serious about it. So I don't know. It's exciting, and the way that I sort of think about like a lot of the Web3 stuff and NFTs and metaverses and all the buzzwords, but like it's just another outlet. It's a way to sort of develop your brand and develop what you do, and that's sort of the nature of being an artist. It's constantly in flux, and you're kind of adapting to it and figuring it out as you go.
I love that point though. When you talk to up and coming artists today and like understand how they're thinking about breaking their projects and things like that. Breaking, by that I just mean getting those first initial fans and finding a following. They think about it like growth hackers. And I've spent a lot of time thinking in that way on tech products, right? And it's the same mindset. It's like where's the unexplored opportunity? Where's the kind of cheap customer acquisition channels that I can tap into or I can access? It's cool. It's really cool.
Yeah.
There's another layer of this that I wanted to mention is that, and I think this is something that's happening naturally with Web3, is that that focus on the maximum amount of people is going away, because now I think people are realizing that you can actually create more of a niche audience.
Yeah, and just extract. You're like creating more value from a smaller set of people.
Mm-hmm. So like, your work is more valuable to that niche group of people than Drake is to the masses, I feel like we always use Drake as like the bad example or whatever. It's like the evil. He's just like,
we got to get Drake on the show to respond.
He's just like an artist, just like anybody else. He's playing the game just like everybody else. Like I don't mean to single him out specifically. He's just like, he's a very mass market artist, and that's fine, whatever. But like, I personally don't like making music that is that mainstream. It's not appealing to me. It's not what I get up in the morning to do. I prefer to make something that's a little bit more niche, a little bit more complex and whatever. It's like at the end of the day, you got to like what you do, right? So like I found this sweet spot, I think, where it's like I still have a pretty sizable audience, but it's not, I'm trying to compete with Katy Perry. I can't compete with Katy Perry. So
she was in the Bahamas. Did you get her down there? Is that the connection?
So she is invested in Audius, but she's also involved with the FTX ecosystem. I think.
Of course, I think so too. I did not see her at the party though. I called it a night really early because I thought I was going to make that trip a healthy Frank trip, where I didn't stay out too late, where I didn't drink heavily, where I ate well, ran on the beach, which was nice, but it also meant I missed Katy Perry. And anyway, I haven't even gotten to my list of questions yet. There's some hard ones, so just keep your socks on. Are you eager to make more informed decisions around crypto using data you can trust? Chainalysis is here to help. Chainalysis demystifies cryptocurrency by providing industry-leading compliance, market intelligence, and investigation support for all crypto assets for organizations like Gemini, Crypto.com, and BlockFi. Gain unparalleled visibility and maximize your potential with the leading blockchain data platform by visiting Chainalysis.com/thescoop now. This episode is brought to you by IWC. IWC Schaffhausen is known for continually innovating within the world of Swiss watchmaking. A pioneer in the use of titanium in ceramics, IWC today specializes in highly engineered watch cases manufactured from advanced materials such as colored ceramics, ceratanium, and titanium aluminide. This year's collection includes colored ceramic pieces in Lake Tahoe white and woodland green. Discover the new collection at IWC.com or download the IWC app to experience a virtual try-on now. One thing that I always wonder, which is, okay, all this stuff sounds great, right? It's good for the creators, it's good for the users. I'm looking at it. I mean, the app is nice. Like, it's aesthetically pleasing. Looks like a pretty good UI. How important, though, is the token for incentives? Like, Andre, if token went to zero, what does that mean for the sort of value of using it as a creator? Do you effectively wait for it to not go to zero? Do you find a platform where the token is higher than zero? And the reason why I think about this, just to give an example from my own life, is honestly, like, my use of StepIn, which is like a run to earn type app, has severely decreased since the token, went away. Like, am I going to like go through the trouble of opening it up when I'm walking to get a bagel when I'm earning nothing for it? I damn sure as hell did it when it was giving me like $50 to go get a bagel and like pay for my coffee and bagel. So maybe it has less to do with the artist than it does for the actual users. Do you think that once there's not that incentive to use and effectively like make some money, not a lot, but does that diminish sort of maybe the degree to which people are sticky to the product itself?
I mean, I'll sort of maybe talk about the broader side of it because I don't know about the specifics, but like basically, like I feel like this is sort of true with crypto in general. Is like it's cyclical in a sense of like price bad, users go away, price good, people come back. Like that's seems to be a trend in general, and I don't think I would sit here and say that audio can't succumb to the same sort of pressure one way or another. But what I will say is, like, again, going back to sort of systems design and like what are we actually doing? I feel like it's still built with the right idea. It's still the right base layer. How people use it, I mean, at the end of the day, is kind of like up to each person. You can't control that. I will say, like, going beyond just the analytics and like all the stuff we were just talking about, like, the idea of like somebody pushing more of Audius to sort of get more audio tokens, I think that will always sort of be relevant and be there. Yeah, it doesn't seem like it seems like it's a sticky thing, but also something that's kind of in the background. So that people just want to use it.
I think you put it. I think you put it very succinctly. They say brevity is the soul of wit, and token bad, use up. Or the other way around. Anyway.
In our case, actually, though, for what it's worth, our usage has not really been impacted over the last 6 months. We've actually grown a little bit in that time. We're growing at a slower rate, to be fair. But
yes. So, well, that raises a good question. To Andre's point, how do you combat the cyclical nature of crypto? There's no cyclical nature of music, really. People always, the number of people who like music is kind of up and to the right? That's never going to really go down.
It's the universality of music, right?
There's more people,
grows,
more listeners,
more people, more people to listen to stuff and engage. But actually, the economics of music are pretty cyclical over long time periods. Interestingly enough, it's typically the rises and falls correlate with the introductions of new forms of media.
Oh, sure.
So if you go all the way back to like 8 tracks and cassette tapes and LP records, each of those transitions actually to some extent like was paired with the rise of a new genre of music that started to reach some level of distribution around them. But yeah, I think the cyclic nature of crypto definitely affects kind of financial products a lot more than a product like Audius, because the usage of Audius is not, people aren't using it to trade things or do behaviors that are kind of market correlated, like people still want to listen to music, right? Even if
they probably want to listen to music more because the market's down.
Yeah. Maybe the genres of music they listen to shift towards the moodier and the more
that would actually be interesting to sort of look at.
Right.
bear market mood music.
Bear market tracks.
The lo-fi hip hop channel is just ascending at a high pace right now. But
there's one thing I wanted to mention real quick is that Audius, I think for the average user, I would bet that there's a lot of people that go on Audius and don't even realize it's crypto related. I think like Audius has done actually a great job of sort of, it's present, it's there if you want it, but it's not like it's not so in your face like a lot of other platforms. And that was actually something that was, you guys started in 2018, like the middle of like there was nothing else like this, and even just like any kind of application layer stuff was not nearly as developed as this. So it's like it's pretty cool to see it, now where it's maybe a little bit more the norm, but like seeing a platform that uses crypto, but it's not, in your face about it. It's like trade token money, like it's more just like, hey, you want to listen to music?
That's where we had to find our initial users. And like, Andre, when you started using Audius, there were no tokens. There was no incentive layer.
Yeah.
Like you were on Audius for over a year, and so were hundreds of thousands of other people at that time with no token, right? The token's only about 18 months old or 16 months old now. So,
Is it your baby? You're referring to it in months, like a mother.
It is.
Okay, fair enough. So yeah, underpinning like the premise of the question is the fact of the matter that crypto just makes things a little bit different. There's these new dynamics. There's cyclical, price dynamics that may have an impact, although you're saying not as big of an impact as people might expect. There's also, of course, the sort of technical aspect of it, right? You don't have to worry about an exploit when it comes to something like Spotify. Mm-hmm. So, how would you kind of speak to that, thorny question? That there's this technical challenge, not for the user necessarily in terms of engaging with the product, but more broadly to the ecosystem, if you will.
Yeah, so particularly relevant question given the timing we're recording this. So the Audius network did suffer a hack about 2 weeks ago that led to the community's treasury funds, which there's this Audius DAO that votes to allocate grant money. Those funds were stolen as part of the hack, and it was super unfortunate for a lot of reasons, right? Frank, to what you just mentioned, it's definitely a setback from just the way that people think about these sorts of things, right? Because you are creating risk in other areas by removing control, right? It's not a free lunch. But I think in this case, the fortunate thing for the network was that user funds were not impacted. The folks who have already received grants and have been building with them, et cetera, were also not impacted. And this treasury was actually scheduled to grow by a significant amount in the near future. And had that already had happened when this hack happened, it could have been far worse as well. So, super unfortunate, of course, but a lot to be thankful for as well in terms of the timing and how it happened and whatnot. Like it could have been much worse. But it was a wake up call to what you're saying, that this isn't a free lunch. It's not categorically better in all ways, right? In some aspects, it is nice to be able to hold a company responsible for things that happen, right? Like if you don't get paid out in the correct manner or something because of some smart contract bug or something else, right? Whereas if Spotify, you have that problem, you like go get mad at Spotify. So I think the trade-off there is worthwhile for what you get in return and for the benefits that we talked about. But from an end user perspective, there is this perception we combat in our community of crypto being scary, crypto being hard to use, all of these sorts of things. All of these are reasons why the product has gone so far out of its way to kind of be welcoming and to be really easy to use without knowing anything about crypto. But in order to get the benefits that decentralization provides, you can't kind of paper over all of these things in the same way that you can like user experience issues, for example.
Well, I just want to send a message out to the hacker. I have acquired over a very long time a very special set of skills. These are skills that make me a nightmare for people like you. You give the money back, that'll be the end of it.
Yeah, fuck whoever that is. That's the real takeaway.
So what was the response? Was there any, are you sort of working with authorities to track down these funds, or what happens next?
Yeah, so as soon as our team found out about the initial exploit, about 15-20 minutes later, we all convened on a video call and started working through what happened with the help of Sam CZ-Sum, head of security at Paradigm as well. We were able to get a patch live that used the same exploit to close the exploit to others about 2 hours later. So that was the end of the active incident, I guess. It was done in 2 hours, but the damage to that treasury was already done by that point, right? So to your point, we are cooperating with folks to try to figure out who this is, hold them responsible. It's an ongoing thing. If history is any guide, unfortunately, the likelihood of finding this person is low, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't try. Right. And we're, trying as hard as we can. It was a sophisticated individual or, group or whomever. Right. But yeah, what was
plot twist? It was Andre.
Yeah.
How do you think I bought all these synths?
Yeah, they're not rigs. What was your crypto journey? You mentioned you did do some ETH mining back in the day. How did you get into this space?
Yeah. So I've always been into computers. I think it goes hand in hand with, music production. You're always around equipment and gear and stuff like that. It's all I've always been into.
You have to have backups for everything, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I have a little bit of like a computer science background, like a couple of courses. And so I've always been interested in programming. Well, that's not really my thing. And I've always been like sort of a Linux user, and I've always followed open source software. So, but I kind of ignored Bitcoin for a while. I didn't get it. I also wasn't really like financially oriented in that way. Like I wasn't super into the financial markets or anything.
Mm-hmm.
So when Bitcoin came around, I it was really only until like late 2016 where I was like, okay, I got to check this out. And then it sort of clicked with me. It's like, oh, this is actually a really interesting sort of technology. They solved actually a really interesting problem, because I had sort of seen, BitTorrent specifically. I compare the two because I think they're kind of in the same vein, where BitTorrent was the demise of the piracy wars,
Mm-hmm.
where it was like, oh, okay, this is actually unstoppable. Like they literally can't win. So I felt like sort of applying that same idea of decentralization to a currency, and that was interesting. But it wasn't really until like Ethereum where I think I watched like a video of Vitalik Buterin talking about,
Mm-hmm.
at DevCon 1 or something like that. And I was like, oh, making that general purpose, that's really interesting. And that's sort of when the light bulb moment for me was like, okay, like we can solve this, we can solve the music industry. It's like very naively thinking we could solve all the world's problems and that this would work perfectly and at scale and at speed. And, the L1s were going to be, the, the base layer of everything. And, I quickly realized also the UIs weren't there. And this was so early, it was like around 2017, like where I experimented with releasing like some music through Ethereum. And I think we have the first album on Ethereum. We can say that. I think we can claim that. Where we developed like a little smart contract with a team at Consensus, which no longer exists, called Udro Music, for the OGs. And we sort of released that, and it was just like a simple like smart contract, like deposit ETH, get zip file, And then I sort of continued to experiment with it. Like I became kind of obsessed with it, became really sort of involved with the broader ecosystem. And I was really, people like to say like literally formed in the bear, of the 2018 2019, like, and it was like seeing like teams like Audius and other people, especially in DeFi, continue to build and like develop these really interesting products. And I stayed kind of obsessed with it and started to build my own little project as well. So I felt like at the time I was kind of late, but now it's sort of like, it seems early.
Yeah, we're still early. I hope, for the sake of my family, please be please be early. I mean, it's interesting, it's weird to see all of these weird worlds connect, and it really shows the interdisciplinary nature of crypto. That's the thesis we have at the Block. You started out as a publication kind of covering mostly financial markets, but it's so wide ranging. And even the show, the first guest we had on, and I think this speaks to this, was the head of the DTCC, which is the effectively the pipes and plumbing of Wall Street, right? They kind of are the settlement layer of traditional finance. And since then, we've had a number of DJs, creators. We had the Simp to Earn folks on. And it just shows the sort of dynamic nature of crypto, right? You were one of the first to release a full album on Ethereum blockchain.
Mm-hmm.
And that sort of corner of the space, I think, isn't paid attention to enough. To some extent, I think, Roneil, you're correct that there is a bit more of a stickiness to the creative side of this world, to the art and music side, even as token price go down, right? You've seen crypto tokens under pressure from the potential ire of regulators. You've got Tiffany's doing some weird, pendant thing with the crypto punks. You've had Gucci today announce that they're going to accept ApeCoin. I mean, and I was talking with a source at Ledger who was telling me about all these different, luxury brands that are going to onboard with them to do various NFT stuff. So it seems like there is a bit more momentum there because it is less driven by price. It's trying to create products and platforms that effectively, to use Bain's word, give the power to the people or the artists, the creators, or the illustrators, or whatever have you. But in any case, when we think about what's to come next, what are some of your predictions for what the future of this corner of the market has in the near term, and then for Audius, specifically?
I'll start with Audius and Andre. I think you're better positioned to talk about the kind of music crypto intersection as a whole. But yeah, I think there's something really special happening right now across the space. I mean, just the level of proliferation of different use cases at that intersection of music and crypto, and the composability between them, and the way people are kind of assembling these different tools together to, again, at the end of the day, it's all about providing differentiated experiences to fans that like give them new ways, financial and otherwise, to engage with you as a creator, right? And yeah, for Audius, there's a ton of stuff coming up, but the big focus for our community this year is on monetization. So Audius to date, I think, has been a great place to build an audience and to understand that audience. It's been an okay place to monetize them, but not a great one. And that's where our focus over the next year is on fleshing out features and tools that give you the ability as a creator on Audius to charge fans for various forms of interaction. Today, that's kind of done softly and indirectly through tools to give utility to NFTs that have been issued elsewhere. For example, there are the token economic incentives that you mentioned, Frank. But yeah, really excited about these things. The first big feature there to launch a couple of weeks ago was tipping, which we've been excited about, and which Andre's been one of the more prolific users of so far as well, which is always exciting to see, right? Because it's not just fan to artist. It's also cool to see that kind of artist to artist interaction start to happen as well.
Because there's a top 10. You want to be in the top 10, so it's like this other kind of like online bragging kind of
Yeah.
element to it.
Yeah. My one hope or ask I could make coming out of the podcast is if there's a way we can get the podcast on Audius, Andre and I will both be in that top 10 supporters for sure. We'll make sure of it. And jokes aside though, it's been really, really awesome to see the reception to that feature and feature set. And it's not easy to use right now, right? The primary source of Audius tokens that folks are using to tip right now are through rewards that they've earned because there aren't kind of on-ramps set up and things like this. So yeah, I'm perhaps giving a bit away there, but yeah, there's some obvious things to come, and then further out, I think some less obvious things to come. We're really excited to give creators on Audius capabilities around kind of once you have and can identify those super fans, which you can do right now, offering them a materially different experience to engage with you through. So things like fan clubs and dynamics of that nature.
I'll sort of talk about maybe the broader ecosystem a little bit, because I feel like Audius is definitely like a part of that. But in Audius, in many ways, is trying to be, I don't think I'm speaking out of line, it's trying to be maybe the main hub for a lot of this, especially like music, NFT stuff. But it's important to acknowledge that it's like compatibility across the board with all the other sort of ideas and things that are floating around. And that to me is like really one of the more appealing things about crypto in general. It's not just the financial side of it, but it's the sort of shared infrastructure. And like, for example, like I think Audius maybe uses its own splits smart contract, but there's OX splits, which is, especially on the Ethereum blockchain, is a pretty common protocol that's basically just like designed to split payments. Like, it's so simple, but it's something that's done on chain that's shared by multiple different platforms. So it's sort of like once you build like a little Lego, people like to use that term a lot with DeFi, but you use that Lego and you can apply it to all these other different things and create these sort of systems, or this like kind of patchwork of like utility or functionality to eventually build something better than what we currently have. So, that's kind of where I see a lot of this going. I think like music and crypto, music NFTs, and like everything that's sort of happening is very much like in its earliest phases. We're very much like just throwing stuff at the wall, seeing what sticks, what works. I've personally tried every different format of NFT and music thing at this point. I've tried one of ones. I've had success with that. We went from breaking records on Super Rare to like Christie's, but we've also done like more collectible stuff on Sounds.xyz is another platform. And like, again, like all those NFTs are on chain, so you can pull it up on your Audius profile. Like, it's all interconnected and it's all compatible. And like that, to me, especially historically, if you look at technology, that's what wins. The compatibility across the board, like that's what ultimately wins, is like an open ecosystem. And it's not Spotify that's their little own walled garden. And so like that's sort of a belief that I have. I mean, but like I think we're still so early and kind of like figuring out what the right model and like what the right amount of NFTs, or if NFTs are even the right thing to do. So I don't know. I mean, it's really all over the place, and it's like highly experimental. But for me, like for somebody like me, this is like my happy place. It's what I love doing. I love trying different things and experimenting, and sort of even trying to sort of imbue an artistic expression in the way you release it and play around with it. So it's all it's part of the toolkit. That's how I think about it.
Yeah, it's just another bow in your quiver. This was a lot of fun. Thank you guys so much for joining the show, stopping by and chatting with us today about a wide range of issues and, of course, the project itself. Where can our listeners learn more about you and what you guys are working on together at Audius?
Yeah, best place to keep up with Audius is our Twitter. It's just Audius Project is the handle. If you want to get involved, Discord's really the best place to do that. There's no shortage of things to do in this community and work to be done. So always looking to have folks hop in and join. And would also encourage you all to go follow RAC on Audius and on other platforms as well. Yeah, Andre, I don't know where else should folks follow you?
What I'm going to encourage people is actually to create an Audius plugin for the new Winamp that just came out.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think they have plugin support. So if you can patch those in, I would really love to listen to Audius on Winamp. No, but yeah. So just like /RAC on pretty much every platform. Do you know how hard it is to get that? It is so hard. It is I feel like it's actually led me to join platforms early because I want to get the username, which has actually been really helpful in my life. But yeah, it's kind of a hassle. So for those in the UK and Australia, the RAC is your AAA. It's like if you're broken down on the side of the road, you call RAC. So I get a lot of tweets from people stuck on the side of the road, and I don't know.
Well, it's also a Rent-A-Center too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
that's right.
So
you've got some infringement that you need to
I have the
work
trademark.
on.
I have the trademark for music, so I'm good. But yeah, no. But the only other thing I'd say is like check out rac.fm. It's sort of like a Web3 enabled little website that I created. It's pretty fun. It looks like a little OS. We call it RAC OS. So check it out.
We will. We'll have to. Maybe the next time we do this, we'll be in the metaverse. That's something we're trying to figure out on our end. Well, guys, thanks so much. That was awesome.
Thank you for having us, man. This was awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back with you again with another great guest. Have an awesome day.